груши поплыли туманы над рекой. Выходила на берег Катюша, на высокий берег, на крутой.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to World of Tanks Blitz. Today we're going to be taking a look at the infamous T54, the Soviet Tier 9 medium tank. This tank is epic fun to drive. It's probably one of the strongest vehicles tier for tier, if not the strongest in the entire game. I know a lot of people have a hard time playing this tank, but if you know how to use its key strengths, if you know how to use its armor capabilities, the great ammunition that you get, the amazing heat penetration, which I'm gonna get back to a bit later, you're gonna have a lot of fun and a lot of success in this tank. It's just a pure powerhouse compared to, at least in my opinion, compared to the other tier 9 mediums. So I'm gonna show you probably 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 gameplays today. We're gonna do an in-depth review of the armor of the tank, where the different modules are, and where you should be shooting it if you're gonna engage it. Also, we're gonna be taking a closer look at the comparison between the other tier 9 medium tanks, both in regards to the armor, the firepower, and the maneuverability. So I hope you're gonna stay tuned for the remainder of this review, because I have some epic gameplays, including some Ace Mastery tankers coming up for you. So stay tuned and let's take a closer look at this battle. You can see I decided to rush in Castilla. I decided to rush the riverbed area. I used the great maneuverability of this tank to simply push into an area where I knew I would be able to dominate the enemies and keep them from engaging our team. When I'm in this position here, and I recommend this position for all fast medium tanks with pretty strong armor, you can stop the enemies from advancing too aggressively. You also dictate the pace of the combat by keeping your enemies, or keeping the enemies having to be aware of multiple sides from where you can shoot them. You can see this Type 62 or T62, he's giving me a bit of grief, but let's see if we can work him out. And there's a little bonus thing coming up a bit later. You're gonna see it. It's actually the first time I've experienced this bug, and I would call it a bug definitely, because it had a big impact on this game. Not directly for me, because I mean we managed to win anyway, but it did mean that I died when I definitely shouldn't have died. But you're gonna see that coming up in just a second. In the meantime, I can tell you that the T54 is probably, or it is, the most produced tank ever in human history. Roughly 86,000 to 100,000 of these tanks were built, and one of the key features of it, the gun, is actually here it comes. Oh look, did you see that? I'm just gonna put that into slow motion just a second. Let me replay that. Okay. See, I'm looking at the Type. He's looking the other way, right? But he still manages to shoot me. That was quite annoying. But anyway, off to some more gameplay. Let's put this tank through more of its tests. So in this game, I am on Lost Temple. I'm in a tier 10 game, and this tank is in many ways built for this map. You have the option of going on the plateau in the temple, where you can accentuate the amazing armor that I'm gonna show you after this replay, and simply dominate your enemies due to your extremely strong turret, the great gun capabilities of this tank, and in general just the performance of it. So you can see I'm pushing up here to the middle of Castilla. I know that there are some enemies down to the right, and multiple enemies have now been spotted in front of me. So first enemy I go for is this ISA. You can see when I'm in this position here, oh boy, this is just a powerhouse position. My frontal armor, you can see he can't shoot my inside drive wheel. So my frontal armor is roughly, I would say 230, 220, 230, 240 millimeters. But he's not seeing a lot of my turret, or he's not seeing a lot of my hull. He's seeing a lot of my turret, and my turret, as I'm gonna show you a bit later, is extremely strong, especially for this tier. I mean, this turret can simply dominate the enemies if it's allowed to get into a hold down position. So I move around, and I think, oh, that might not be a wise decision, since there is an FV215B183 that has not yet been spotted. If you don't know the raw gun statistics of that tank, check it out, because, oh boy, that tank really packs a punch. One of the features that this tank unfortunately doesn't have, but that's of course due to balancing reasons, is gun depression. The gun depression is limited to 5 degrees, which is, to be honest, it's not very good. It's the same as the Type 62, 1 degree worse than the Object 140, 1 degree worse than the E50, although the E50 does have 8 degrees over the side, and that gives it a big plus in comparison to the Type 54. So we spotted someone spotted the FV215B in the back, and I'm gonna see if I can try to do some work on him. There's also the, oh boy, that was a bit stupid of me, maybe a bit aggressive, maybe a bit too aggressive. I try to push around here, oh, ouch. So the FV hits me, I panic a bit, I try to drive up on the temple, take a snapshot at him, load the adrenaline, and boy, everything. I'm just making a lot of quick decisions, and maybe not the best decisions, to be honest. So this T54 here, you just saw how little of the tank you can actually see when you're in between these small areas here on top of the temple, and that really gives you it just gives you opportunities to use your armor in such a great way. I'm a bit nervous now because an IS-3 Defender has come up. He used one of his shots. I want to put a shot into him before he goes down. I do land a shot on him, and our IS-7 takes out the enemy IS-7. So one thing that can happen when you're playing this tank is you can get a bit cocky in it sometimes. You can overestimate how good the tank actually is, or how bad you think the enemies are, and that it happens for me like roughly every 10-20 games. I feel like I'm Superman in this tank, and I feel like I can do anything and I can take on everyone. But when you get into those moments, it's really important that you try to calm down and try to balance yourself, because you're only going to get yourself into a lot of trouble. So we can see the FV now. He's spotted. I think I'm in a very, very strong hold down position, and the only way he's going to kill me is if he shoots an HE or a hash ammunition at me. But you can hear in a second that he did in fact not shoot HE or hash at me. It was an AP who probably went through the bottom part of my hull, or maybe even through the turret. He has 310mm of penetration, so he's one of the few tanks that could do it. Let's go check out the armor profile in more detail in Armor Inspector. So taking a closer look at the T54's armor profile, we can see that the front of the hull is 120mm on the upper plate, but it's also 120mm on the lower plate. This is unlike, for example, the E50, which has a weaker lower plate than the upper plate. Looking at it from the side, we can see it has this pretty big area here, which is 80mm, which is the general side armor. The rear is nothing special. It's 45 at the top and 20 at the bottom. So that means that anything that's going to shoot you in the back is going to be able to penetrate you, and that even means that if they shoot your turret, they are probably also going to penetrate, because the back of the turret is only 86mm. You can see on the top of the turret here we have 65mm, which is what is indicated inside the game client. So, but the real area where the T54 excels is its amazing turret armor. Looking at it here, we can see that this area here is 200mm. So you can see what it says in the garage is that the armor is 200mm, and often that means it's the strongest part which is being mentioned. But on the T54, the strongest part covers pretty much all of the front of the turret. You can see the sides out here, they are very, very well angled. It's going to be pretty much an auto ricochet if people shoot there, and it's 160mm. You do have these two small cupolas, but they are actually not that weak. They are 160mm, and looking at them, you can see that they're sloped backwards, like this. Also on the other side, and to be honest, they are so small targets that it's going to be very, very difficult for anyone to reliably hit them. Anyway, let's take a bit of a closer look at the modules of this tank, where they are positioned, and how you can effectively fight them and where you should be shooting. So we have the T54 in the penetration model here. Just scooping it a bit around so you can see how strong it is. Just FYI, I've selected the M46 pattern using regular AP ammunition to shoot at the T54 here. But let's just enable the modules, and see what it looks like. Okay, let's start on the right hand side. So you can see pretty much everywhere you're gonna hit the tank, you're gonna hit a module. And that's of course because the tank is very, very small in nature. It has a big crew, there's a lot of different modules. So cramping all that up in a very small place means that there's gonna be a very high chance that you are gonna be able to hit them, or a very high risk if you're the one driving the T54. What you really want to be careful about is the yellow areas here. That's the ammo rack. This tank has a notoriously weak ammo rack. That means that pretty much, I would say, every second game, every third game maybe, if you're not using the wet ammo rack, you're gonna be sustaining ammo rack damage, and you really want to negate that. And one way of negating it is by showing the other side of the tank. You can see there's not nearly as much ammo rack visible here. There's only the same ammo rack that we targeted from the other side, which is visible on this side. Going back again, you can see we have 3 different areas where there's an ammo rack here. That means that when you're engaging your enemies, if you have to let them shoot you, and if you can't really get in a position where you can bounce their shots, make sure you present the left side of the tank to the enemy. So apart from the ammo rack, we can see you have some fuel tank here. You have, of course, the tracks in the front. You can see the fuel tank, which is also one of the reasons why this tank pretty easily catches fire. And if you're going to be shooting this from the front, it's kind of a win-win situation. If you shoot to the left, you're going to be hitting the fuel tank, possibly even the ammo rack, depending on how much penetration power you have. If you shoot to the right of the tank, you're going to be hitting the driver. I'm not going to anticipate that you are going to be shooting it directly in the turret, but if that's your only option, the only places you really reliably are going to be able to penetrate it is right next to the gun. So on the left and right side of the gun, the armor is the weakest, and also on the cupolas. So you can see, even though they were 160 degrees and at a slight angle, we get roughly 200 millimeters. The rest of the turret is very, very strong, as you can see here. Oh boy, 330, this tank is just a hull-down beast. Let's try switching the shooter to another tank right after we check out how I think you should be angling this tank most effectively. So I'm going to take it to when the side armor is going to be able to start being penetrated. So you can see the side is now an auto ricochet, and the front is roughly 210 millimeters of effective armor, which is very, very, very good. I mean, you're going to be bouncing tier 7 mediums, tier 7 heavy tanks all day long. Anything that doesn't shoot premium at you is going to have, at least if it's a tier 8, it's going to have roughly a 50-50 chance whether they're going to be able to penetrate or not. So now I've selected the M48A1 pattern with the top gun, not the stock M46 pattern gun, but the top gun to shoot at the T54. So you can see that instantly, as soon as I switched, the whole front is pretty much an auto penetration every time you shoot at it. But let's try to exaggerate the angles a bit and adapt to like an actual gameplay moment. So if you angle it roughly like this, and let's say you have a small hill roughly around the right hand front drive wheel, you can see that we've angled the upper hull part now actually so much that we get 260 millimeters of effective armor. You get 250 on the lower plate, and if you take that just a bit more and maybe even put this into a position like this, you're gonna get an auto ricochet. And that's okay, because, I mean, in this position, let's anticipate you have a small hill. You're just going to be showing a very little side, very little front of your tank, and your gun can still depress enough to actually engage the enemies. So without further ado, let's check out a comparison of this tank compared to the other tier 9 medium tanks in armor profile. So here I've made this little spreadsheet on top of a picture of the T54, adding up the front and the front and side of the hull and the turret. So you can see, compared to the other medium tanks at tier 9, the T54 is very, very strong. The hull is second best, but even though the E50 has 150 millimeters, I feel much more safe driving the T54, simply because it's at a much steeper angle, and it's 120 millimeters. Both on the lower plate and on the upper plate, whereas the E50 is 150mm on the top plate, and that's a pretty big difference if you ask me. In regards to the turret armor, you can see that the T54 is on top of the hill again, and the only thing that actually comes close, at least in regards to raw numbers, is the E50. But you all know the E50's turret as being it's flat left and right of the mantlet. It's actually pretty easily penetrated. It also has a pretty nasty cupola that you can hit. So in regards to the turret armor, the T54 is definitely the best one. So overall, I rate the T54's armor to be the best of any tier 9 medium tank, and definitely capable of brawling against almost any tank that you meet, where you're going to reliably be bouncing a lot of shots, especially in one-on-one engagements, because the tank is also very low profile compared to some of the other counterparts. So without further ado, let's check out a similar spreadsheet to this one in regards to the mobility of the tank and also the gun performance. So here we go. Here is the spreadsheet with the tier 9 medium tank comparison in regards to the mobility. Instantly you can see that the T54, in general, it has the best traverse speeds, both turret and track traverse, of any of the tanks, especially when you combine the two. That means that you can really move this tank. It feels very nimble to drive, feels almost like it's floating across the battlefield. Whereas an E50, for example, it feels very sluggish, and even though it does have a 60 km/h top speed, it's very rare that you actually get up to that speed unless you're going downhill. Of course, the Leopard PTA is the king of the tier 9 medium tanks in regards to mobility, but that's just because, I mean, it has no armor, so it has no weight to carry around. It also has a massive engine. So let's check out the raw gun statistics of the T54. So comparing it again to the other tier 9 medium tanks in regards to the gun performance, you can see that the T54 has the second highest DPM of any tier 9 medium tank. It also has the by far worst penetration of them all. But like I said a bit earlier in the video, what really makes this tank so good is not the regular AP ammunition, it's the heat ammunition, which has a whopping 330mm of penetration. It's extremely expensive to use the heat ammunition, and that is why this tank, in my opinion, is the ultimate gold noob tank. Everyone can win driving this tank and loading only heat, because it simply has so much penetration that you're going to be overwhelming all your enemies one by one. So let's get back into the game and check out some more great gameplay of this fantastic tank. So here we go, we are back on Lost Temple, and once again it's a tier 10 game. The enemies have 2 tier 10 tanks, 4 tier 9s and a single tier 8, and we have an identical setup on our team. As you saw in the previous replay, what I like to do on Lost Temple is go to the plateau, especially in these in a tank such as the T54, which has some very uniquely strong turret armor and also has the great hull armor when it's angled. So I'm pushing directly up there. I was trying to make way for the IS-7 so I didn't hit him, try to avoid the tree here so I don't knock it down, and I managed to get almost all the way up before I get spotted. I see the 103 there, and there's the E100 on my left. His turret, if he had been looking this way, he could have planted a shot into me, but luckily he wasn't. So instantly you can see I was using the AP ammunition. Of course I bounced because I didn't aim that shot. I've switched over to the heat now, and as I mentioned earlier, the heat ammunition is amazing. You just saw here, the AP penetration is simply not good enough to go through even the pretty common weak spots that are known. You can see this Jagdtag, I know he's looking at me. I'm gonna take a shot and I'm gonna give him 2 back. Because my rate of fire is significantly better than his, then I'll have no problems landing 2 shots while he only gives me 1. You can see that I used the AP penetration or the AP ammunition for the second shot, and I had no troubles penetrating it as long as I was able to take my time and aim at the lower plate. The problem is you don't always have time to aim, you don't always have time to sit still, and that's why the heat ammunition on this tank is so tempting, because you really just know that you're going to be able to penetrate pretty much every single shot that you fire and do damage. And I mean, it's a difficult trade-off, because I mean, when are you just a gold noob, and when are you just playing the game to how it was intended to be? And I mean, premium ammunition is in the game to be used, and everyone can buy it. You can buy it for credits. It's not a pay-to-win thing, in my opinion. Although I'll say that if you're not running a premium account and you play the T54 using a lot of heat, you're gonna lose a lot of credits. So we could see that the heat penetration was more than enough to go through the front of the E100 turret, and that's in a way it feels kind of strange, because you know he's a tier 10 heavy tank, maybe one of the heaviest armored tanks in the game, apart from the Mouse and the IS-7, and with my premium ammunition I have no problems going through his strong frontal armor. You see, I don't need the premium ammunition against the Löwe, and I don't need it against this E75 either, because he's not angling. But as soon as the way he's looking now, I'm not going to be able to penetrate unless I have time to aim at his weak cupola. And you can see here the T54, my counterpart on the enemy team. I couldn't penetrate him reliably with my AP ammunition, even though I was shooting down on his upper plate. And as we saw earlier in Armor Inspector, the upper plate is 120mm thick. Effectively, it's around 200. Maybe you'll get it up to 260, depending on how much you angle the upper plate. So this T62, he's pretty much the last enemy alive, and I'm just gonna go down here. I have no problems brawling with anyone. As long as I load my heat, I know that I'm gonna be able to take him out, and it does feel a bit strange. He's a tier 10 medium tank, and I'm gonna be penetrating him every single time I shoot at him, unless I'm unlucky and hit his turret. So this was a quick-paced game, another tier 10 game, and the final tier 10 game of this review, because this tank, it is a tier 9, so let's check out how it performs against similar tier tanks and tanks 2 tiers below it. So this time we're on Black Goldville, and it's a top tier 9 game. The enemies have 2 T54s, we also have 2 T54s. I want to go into a very aggressive location in the middle of the map, where I can use the great view range of this tank, which is 260 meters, to good effect. I know that in a matchup like this, the tanks that are going to be able to penetrate me are the 2 T54s if they shoot heat at me, and the ISU if he can shoot me pretty much anywhere. But you can see here that we've already spotted the first guy going up, and that's why I think this position where I'm in right now is very, very strong, especially in a T54, because you can sort of hold down over this little undulation in the terrain, and not only that, but you can side scrape off the rock. You can see I managed to turn my tank inwards in the last second so he can't penetrate me. I aim for his fuel tanks, hit them, set him on fire, and he's just in a world of hurt. So we finish him off quickly and in style. So in a game like this, you can really dominate the enemy team. You can, because the T54 is so strong, you can really just take the fight to the enemies. You don't have to be overly afraid, unless of course the enemies are all shooting premium ammunition at you. You're gonna be able to bounce a lot of shots from them. Take a look at this T44. My tank was angled at maybe 30 degrees, something like that, and he didn't have any chance to go through me unless he was gonna be selecting to shoot some premium ammunition at me. Now we have this KV4, he's shooting, I just reversed back. He could only see my turret when I reversed back there, and he didn't manage to penetrate me. On to the next tank, because this game is it's rowdy, and that's what you can really do in this tank. You can just dominate games so much more than you can in, at least in my opinion, in any other tank in the game. You can really just take the fight to the enemies, and you don't have to be afraid, because the tank is, the T54 is very well armored. It has great damage output, as I've already shown you with the spreadsheet pictures, and the armor is just, I mean, it's amazing. You can bounce pretty much anything. So I'm face-hugging this guy now. Managed to land an AP shell, and I've selected to shoot AP now. There's no reason for me to shoot anything else. He's gonna have a very hard time penetrating me, because I'd always, when in a dogfight, it's very important you always try to keep the front of your tank towards the enemy to give you to maximize the opportunity of getting a bounce. So now we are down to this ISU, and you can see this game has been incredibly fast. 2 minutes 30 seconds in, and we've already stacked up a ton of damage. We've we've really helped our team to get this victory. Even though we didn't go into a position which was where we were under a lot of fire. We went into a pivotal position near the center of the map. You can see I'm progressing against this ISU, and I turn right in the last second before he thinks I'm gonna come around from the left side. Let's see if we managed to catch him. Yes, we did. He was not able to turn quickly enough. I ram him slightly, take off his tracks and my own tracks, and now it's basically just cleaning up. My team is gonna be here in a second, and we're just gonna finish off this guy in style. So I think this game really highlighted how strong this tank is when it's top tier. If you play to the strengths of the tank, you're gonna have some epic games when you're top tier tank. The next replay is going to be an Ace Mastery, and I'm also top tier there, and I'm going to show you again just how I think you should be playing this tank. So here we go, we are on Fort Despair, and this map is changing its meta, I feel, in some way, because previously it was very common that everyone went around the back of the fort, at least all the heavy tanks did, but I feel now that the meta on the map has changed a bit, and it's becoming more of a middle area fight around the cap zone and this side of the map. Because it's more open, you get more opportunities to really exploit the strengths of the tank. But the T54 has no problems in this map either, because, you know, here we go, we have a Comet in front of us. He has 100 and I think it's 160 or 150 millimeters of penetration, and he has to shoot through 200 millimeters of effective armor, and that means that he's pretty much never going to be able to penetrate me. So I can see that the enemies have stacked up in the town. I want to go finish off this Comet so he doesn't get my flank at a later point in the game. So I simply move in here, take off his tracks, drive around him, check out the great mobility of the T54. He can shoot again, he bounces again. My T44 friend, he takes him out effectively. And what happened there? I mean, we were up against the Comet, which is probably, if not the strongest, then at least one of the strongest tier 7 medium tanks. I know that he's up against a tier 9, but he didn't do any damage to me. He didn't really have any chance against me, and that's kind of the feeling that you get sometimes when you drive the T54. It just feels so powerful that the enemies, they don't have a chance against you. And that is, like I mentioned earlier, also one of the reasons why sometimes you end up feeling a bit too cocky and overconfident, and you simply get taken out in a regular bloodbath. So we can see that my IS-8 teammate here, he's doing some good work, but he's under a lot of pressure. We have an STI closing in on him, IS-8, IU-251, T-44, and the Object 704 is back in the corner. So we push around. We don't want to get spotted by the STI before we're able to shoot at him. So you can see he's popping into our vision now. I just want to move a bit forward so I have a clear shot on him, and I land a great shot on the STI. So I think the STI might have been lagging a bit. You're going to see something strange in a second. So look at him now. So what's he doing? Okay. He is trying to hump the fort, I guess. Maybe a bit of love moves there from the STI, but nevertheless, we do bounce a shot of his great armor. So I load the adrenaline and I decide, okay, keep on shooting this STI. I managed to sneak a shot in through the back on his tank, and he's down to pretty much a 1 or 2 shot for me now. I'm a bit concerned about the Object 704 because I don't know exactly where he is. He could be coming around my back, so I decide I want to make every shot count. So I load the heat again to take out the STI, and now I'm gonna go into a dogfight with this IS-8. You can see he penetrated my side armor pretty easily there, and well, I mean, you can't bounce everything in this tank, but I actually thought that the way he was looking at me, that I was going to be able to pull off a bounce there, because I was roughly at 20-25 degrees maybe, driving head on towards him, but he did manage to penetrate my side armor, and that just goes to show that you need to stick to the roughly 20 degrees that I mentioned earlier, because otherwise people are going to be able to penetrate your sides, which only has an effective armor value of approximately 200 millimeters. So again, we're trying to stay concealed as long as possible. We go in now for the kill on the Object 704. We can see he's looking for us, so we don't want to go up to him. We want to simply scoot past him. I land a clutch shot on him. Snapshot very easily landed with this tank, especially when you equip it with the vertical stabilizers like I have. And we simply just work him over. He has no chance against us. So here we go, last shot. and a great game, which really highlighted all of the key strengths of this tank. The great mobility, the great DPM, the great armor values. You can simply dominate in a tier 9 game, and I really hope that you guys, after watching this video, if you haven't already picked up the T54, go and do it, because this tank is a lot of fun and you're gonna be dominating a lot of games if you try to follow some of the tips that I've given you here. I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a happy Easter. Bye bye everyone.